accident. She was only 7. And before that, her dad, my ex-husband, who I still care for, had died 7 months before in a plane crash.
Oh, my gosh.
So I had a lot of direct experiences, communications with both of them. And before my daughter died, my ex-husband was an attorney, and he was kind of agnostic. And after he died, he came to me in a dream, and, you know, it was all color. He was color. Everything was dark behind him. And so, you know, I said, hey, you know, so is there a God? You know, that was my first question to him, and he started laughing. He said, it's not the way people think it is, but it's better than you can ever imagine. And I liked that. And then I asked him about our daughter. You know, what about our daughter? You know, should I take her to church? I don't know what, you know, what should I do? And he said, you don't really need to worry about it. It's all going to work out. You know, 4 months, 5 months later, she was dead. So it's kind of like he knew. And my daughter, my question revolves kind of around my daughter. It turns out that she had premonitions that she was going to die and be with her dad. And she had told her friends at school that she wasn't afraid to die, that she was going to be with her dad in heaven. And she had asked me a lot of questions about it. And I was wondering if it's common for the children or teenagers in your research to also have premonitions, knowing about that they would die and go to the other side, you know, whether briefly or...
Yes. These types of premonitions are very, very common and frequently overlooked. You know, I remember one young man who even gave away his baseball card collection only days before he was tragically killed it was teenagers fooling around with guns, you know, the way they do. And he was tragically and accidentally killed. But prior to that, he had given away his baseball card collection, and he wrote his mom a poem about, you know, just how much he loved her, which you can imagine, you know, how many, you know, 17-year-old boys do that, and how she shouldn't worry about him now that he had died. And he hid that poem in his room, you know, and of course they discovered it, you know, after his death. You know, these kinds of premonitions. I want to just back up from your question just a little bit, because I'm just, you know, thank you for calling. Really, my obligation, you know, the whole reason that I'm talking to you now, George, is, you know, at 4 o'clock in the morning, is because I feel an enormous obligation. I've resuscitated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children for the first 10 years of my career, and almost all of them died. And, you know, this question of whether these experiences are real is one that I take extremely seriously. Because, I mean, I don't know, you know, I think all the other researchers, you know, they have the problem of, you know, well, was the child really, or was the adult really near death, or, right. You know, people just, you know, whereas these are by and large patients that I resuscitated myself. So, you know,
they were gone. And had you not resuscitated them the way you did, they were gone. Oh, they were dead.
Put a needle in their heart. I had to put a needle in the heart of one young girl and brought her back to life. And she told me several years later, she said she was never so alive as the time that she was dead.
Are you the one, by the way, that has to go talk to the parents after the fact?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was given that job early in my career, and it's very, very difficult. But what I wanted to say was, the caller's name is Debbie, is that right?
It's Debbie in Austin.
Yeah. You know, Debbie, is see, all of these perceptions, whether we're talking about premonitions or after-death communications or near-death experiences or the type of mediumship, or controlled remote viewing, they are all what we call non-local perceptions, meaning that they're sensory perceptions. They're things that seem as real as any other experience, but, you know, obviously they're coming to us through non-ordinary means. And, you know, so the first part of my career, I would say the first 5 or 6 years, I documented and published in the American Medical Association's journals that the near-death experience was real. And then the next part of my career, the next 5 or 6 years, were spent documenting that very specific areas of the brain allow us to have these experiences. And then now you can understand my interest in controlled remote viewing, because that's the one perception, the one non-local perception. It's mediated by the same brain pathways, etc. But it's the same. It's the one that then we can, open the envelope and we can say, aha, in fact, that perception was real. And if I'm able to, if my wife and I, we work as a team, and if someone like Paul Smith can give me a number, and he mails me the number, and we can work the target and accurately describe, and we have to commit ourselves in writing and then with sketching, sketch that target. And there is no doubt in my mind that a premonition that the premonitions that your daughter had are real, that the communications that you have with your husband who died are real. They're all, because they're all mediated by the same brain pathways. They're all under the umbrella of non-local perceptions.
Okay, text message in from Sam in Burbank, California. Wants to know if you've had cases of people who have had near-death experiences. They come back, but they never said anything about the other side. It's like it's empty. Has that ever happened?
Oh, sure. I'd actually say that's one of the most common experiences, because these are not really after-death experiences. These are either the patient is dead, but they're only dead for seconds,
right.
or they're as close to death as you can possibly get and be resuscitated. And that's kind of an intellectual point that I don't want to get into. But they're not. These are not people. They're talking about what happens in the process of dying. This, being drawn out of the physical body, this merging with this spiritual light. I like the way children describe it. They say, that it's a light that had a lot of good things in it. Or, this one guy says to me, "That was weird. You guys just sucked me out of my body and put me into a light." And then, and part of this, this is a spiritual experience, and it's very personal. When we studied these experiences in Japan, Japanese children told us, that they came to the edge of the water. There's a lot of, boundaries like that, since Japan is an island. They ate a lot of butterflies. We studied near-death experiences in Africa. We heard about people being in gourds and, walking through paths in the jungle. And then they're often given a decision to return. But I'm not aware, really, that these are then, afterwards. So how come people have this sense of emptiness? Well, the most common reason is since the experience is dependent. I looked at, these long, complex resuscitations, and you have these really long, complex experiences. Well, most people, very quick resuscitation, they're just entered into the darkness. And so they're mistaking that for the entire experience. I had this one guy, he says to me, well, I never saw any God. I just rose out of my body and I was plunged into darkness. Does that mean I was in hell? Well, I looked at his medical records. He was only resuscitated for like 3 seconds. His heart stopped beating and they restarted him. Well, so he just had the beginnings of the experience. And then I think that for the other people, they're just misunderstanding that, it's not this is not the entire experience. This isn't what happens to us after we die. So of course, we don't know, and children particularly, they don't pretend to know. Adults, of course, write these, 200-page books.
Yeah,
but most
absolutely.
of that is their guesses, their best guess. That's the incorporation of their own religious beliefs into the experience.
Well, I was going to say, don't you think their religious beliefs or what they've been taught affects them from their near-death experience? It kind of dilutes what really was happening, maybe?
Oh, absolutely, because we don't hear that. You want to know the most common thing that children tell me? They say the experience is weird.
Yeah.
That's the number one. They go, yeah, it was really weird.
And how
That's
honest can they
body.
get? You know?
See, they don't know what happens to them. A lot of times they'll just go, I was like in this tunnel and I was going somewhere and I don't know why. So that's the caller's question. I mean, maybe, particularly if you just had that experience that you're in a tunnel and you don't know why. Here's like one boy. He said to me that
let's get that when we come right back. And then we'll take the rest of the phone calls. We'll be right back. Hey, look for the Facebook logo at the top of the navigation bar of our new website, coasttocoastam.com, and you can go directly to Facebook, which is now got the coasttocoastam.com participation. We've had a growing list of friends, so go ahead and check out the Facebook logo on the top of the navigation bar at coasttocoastam.com. When we come back, we'll take final phone calls with Dr. Melvin Morse on Coast to Coast AM. And Melvin, you were talking about a little boy when the break got us this time, about what he may have seen or did not see.
Well, what I really just wanted to say is these experiences are very real, and there was a text message saying, what about, when there's sort of emptiness, etc. I don't make any effort to read stuff into it. I'm so fortunate, George, that, by and large, these patients, they told me their experience, the first time. Yeah. And these children would just go, like this little boy goes, that was weird. You guys sucked me out of my body. But they're puzzled by the experience. They don't know what to make of it. This little girl says to me, and then I was back. And I said, well, what do you mean by you were back? And she goes, that's what I've been trying to figure out. But she doesn't say that, after she's told the story, 100 times. And adults, sure, like you're saying, they embellish and they put all their own religious preoccupations and all that kind of stuff into it. But just keep in mind that these experiences are real, and we're not supposed to know what they mean necessarily. But I want to leave time for the callers. I want to hear what other callers have.
Got some good stories here. Let's go to Travis in West Milford, New Jersey, east of the Rockies. Hey, good morning, Travis.
Good morning, George. I really enjoyed last night's show. I hope you do some more like that.
Sure thing.
Your previous guest comment about the log cabin not being an accident, that's a really relevant thought right under your nose. Your current guest has some fascinating things he's saying. My question is there any maybe theoretical scientific way to track consciousness or thought after death? And I'll take my answer off air. Thanks.
Well, that could be one of the things you're working on, Melvin, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that we're trying to answer that question more inferentially and tangentially, in the sense that we're trying to say, hey, wait a minute, 1/3 of the human brain seems to be dedicated to having, what I called, non-local perceptions. 1/3 of our brain allows us to communicate with what people call God, have premonitions, so how can we just dismiss that as nothing? And then you have other scientists who are coming along, like Robert Lanza, who are saying that the only way that he can understand consciousness at all is if it came first, and then the brain is a sort of sensory organ to perceive it. The cutting edge of evolutionary biology makes the same kind of a statement. Increasingly, neurologists neuroscientists are saying that memories may be stored outside the brain. The father